My financial advisor told me if I just stopped spending money, I could afford to retire. So, but to know, like, do I have enough? And it really, that isn't the question. It's what do I want?
Hey everybody, I'm Jamie Whyte, and I want to thank you for joining us on our first Finishing Strong podcast. Finishing Strong is dedicated to helping men who are transitioning from working full-time to something else and helping them discover how to live their next season with purpose. Through our website, finishing-strong.org, we provide resources to help guide people in a process to evaluate their gifts, talents, and passions, and to redefine their new purpose. I've observed that most people spend a lot of time planning financially for this season, but have not considered the significant emotional impact this transition can have. Periodically, we offer a weekend experience to help facilitate this process. On our podcast, we're going to be interviewing guests who offer great insights into this season of transition, either through their books, their experience, but mostly just their perspective. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from Bob Goff. Bob is a New York Times bestselling author, podcaster, speaker, and just a funny and amazing guy. And at 63, Bob is finishing strong and entering into his own new season of transition. Let's hear from Bob. Bob, thank you for being with us here today.
Wow, I am so thrilled to be on this, Jamie. Thanks for including me. And for everybody listening, I hope this is a time where you'll hear a couple things that Jamie's saying and we talk about. And if it makes sense, take a couple notes and decide, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah. So let me make a connection between Bob Goff and Finishing Strong. About this time last year, you and I started a coaching relationship. And my request for you at that time was say, Bob, I don't have a lot of clarity on how I want to spend this next season of my life. And that's what I'd like our topic to be as we walk through this together. And after about 2 sessions, you came along and said, look, here's what I've heard. You like travel. You really live and spend a lot of time in some cool places. You like connecting people. You've done a lot with men's gatherings over time. So why don't you put a group of guys together and start this process and just walk through it with some other guys. And you don't have to have all of the answers. You just have to have a lot of the questions. And so that's what kicked us off in 2022. And since that time, I've done one in Colorado. I've done one in Rwanda. We got our next one scheduled in Vail, Colorado, and Rwanda's asking us to come back. So really fun stuff.
Who are you? That's
well,
awesome.
It's been a fun ride.
I think you nailed it, that idea of asking the questions. And of the 307 questions that Jesus asked, he only answered 3. And so among the things I love about what you're doing is you're setting a safe place where men can get together and just ask the questions. Faith's not a big deal for everybody, it is for me. And there's a guy kind of like me, kind of like you, in Mark 9, and he says, I believe, just help my disbelief. Like, help me the part that I don't get yet. And I think whether you're meeting with guys in Rwanda, which I want to be one of those guys, or Vail, I mean, like, I think when I did my first gathering, it was in Lodi or something. And I just think to have a safe place, a nice place, and ask the questions of each other, that's where all the growth happens. Because I think everybody wants the same thing. They want love, purpose, connection, and a couple authentic relationships. And what we've spent time together, and I think we've been learning from each other, I think these are the things that you have to offer: love, purpose, connection, authentic relationships. Because that's where we grow. And if we can stop from just snorkeling in the top 2 feet of our relationships and start shipwreck diving where the gold is, that just means a little bit of time away from all the crazy and all the distractions and focusing on what are the real questions in my life. Like, I'm not wondering who am I going to marry. I decided that 35 years ago, and you're not wondering who you're going to marry. I am wondering what's it like to move from a guy who's been really busy doing what I'm capable of to a guy who's on my back porch with grandkids doing what I know I'm called to. Because I got the busy, go to a lot of places and talk a lot of things nailed. I know that. I don't know how to sit quietly on the back porch. And so I'm learning because I'm convinced that that is my next place, not to atrophy there, but to just say, how can I continue to write, to do things, to do those things that I'm actually available to do? Because me being stuck in an airport in Detroit isn't getting me where I want to go with my grandkids.
Yeah, and you're talking about that season of life that is our sweet spot in finishing strong. People in their 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, who are in the middle of some kind of transition. They're transitioning from working full time to something else. And for some, they've been thinking about it a long time, but almost always what I found is the guys are thinking about financially. Do I have enough money to make it? You know, can I do, am I gonna outlive my money? And that's been the kind of where they've invested time. And what I've observed and what I found with people coming on the weekends is that they haven't prepared themselves mentally or emotionally for that transition of doing something else. They leave a job or sometimes just transition out of a job over a period of time, and they think, you know, hey, I'm going to play golf 5 days a week. I'm going to go do this and go do this, and very quickly they're bored and they're looking for purpose. And so we try to come alongside them and give them an opportunity to, as you say, ask themselves questions, ask each other questions, and then we pose a lot of questions to them over the weekend. And I use materials from a lot of authors. I use a lot of your stuff. And one of the books that I just love because it's so perfect for me is Undistracted, that you wrote last year.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed that.
So tell me about you and I are in the same age range and really close. What have you observed with guys our age, and how do you see the message out of Undistracted impacting men? How do you see that message coming to them as they begin to explore the next season of their life?
Yeah, every age has its own challenges, right? You know, I don't know whatever age you are when you start dating. You were probably 12. I was like 24. But that presents its unique challenges to say, like, hey, who am I doing life with? Am I like going it alone, or am I with somebody? And what am I looking for? Somebody like me, like amped and like all this energy, or somebody like the one I got, which is like stable and nurturing. And so that was a set of questions in our 20s. And then there's these years in our 30s and 40s where it's about achieve and conquer and, you know, refine your expertise and things.
Mm-hmm.
And then 40s, you're kind of probably a lot of people have experienced whatever successes they have, both financially and with their family. In your 50s, you're just kind of solidifying that. But then you're saying, like, oh my gosh, what happens when I'm 60 something, which I'll be 64 next month. So I'm like, I was wondering in my 50s, what happened when I was me? The good news is this confluence of things. You're like, my financial advisor told me if I just stopped spending money, I could afford to retire. So, but to know, like, do I have enough? And it really, that isn't the question. It's what do I want? And I wanted, like, I think what you do with your guys is to say, what do you want? And then vet that and say, why do I want that? Mm-hmm. And then decide underneath that is, what am I going to do about it? And if we go to what am I going to do next without really saying what's going to last, not what's going to work, because at 30s and 40s, that's what's going to work. And at 50s and 60s and 70s, it's what's going to last. Because I don't care if it works. There's all kinds of things. I could go be a lawyer, that would work, but it ain't going to last. It doesn't matter for me. And it's awesome, Mazel Tov, if you're a lawyer and that blows your hair back, but it just didn't do that much for me.
Yeah, Richard Leiter uses the kind of the little formula: gifts gifts and talents plus values plus passion equals your purpose, right? And I think that combination of things, and you address some of those things in Undistracted as well.
Maybe knowing where you're at in the game board too. And no, none of us know when our last day here on earth, or maybe stated less dramatically, like when we'll be less ambulatory. Like you just can't move around. I tip over easier than I used to be able to catch my balance easier than I can now. I'm like, what in the world? Do I have like lead in my pants or whatever? But I just couldn't recover my balance as quickly. And so I'm thinking I need to go do the things now that I will probably have greater difficulty later. So it's part of like refining to say, hey, what am I up to? What am I available? And then be strategic to say, what are the things I can do now that, so if Kilimanjaro was on your list, I wouldn't defer that. I would say like, let's get her done. They're just like one country over from Rwanda. And so to say what I want to do is during this period of time, strategically, I want to do these things. And then not ignoring the financial piece to say, okay, I need to stop buying expensive cars if expensive cars are your jam, or Cheetos, or whatever it is that is draining your bank accounts, to say, hey, you know what, I could tweak that if I could do this over here. So, and I think most guys are just a solid 30 hours away from figuring it out. And that's why I love what you're doing, because you find a wide spot in the road and you say, let's figure it out. Let's have a plan. Here's the premise. Hope without a plan is a wish. So you can be hoping for, I hope I'm happy, but just say like, what's a plan for things that would give you lasting happiness? And you might find that in your faith, in your family, in your doing a little bit of fun stuff, and to say, okay, so what can I afford to do? Not just economically, but like relationally, what can I afford to do? Because there's a lot of guys that are our age that spin out and go on this hedonistic bender and do nutty stuff. And they say relationally, they actually couldn't afford that. And so to say you don't want to be writing checks you can't cash.
Yeah, well, like always, you're full of great counsel and stories, and I'm usually I'm writing them down, but this time we're actually have it recorded, so I get to have this memory of your counsel forever. So you have shared, and I've shared with you, we're both Enneagram 7s, right? And so the often called the enthusiast, which brings a lot to the table for lots of groups. But I pulled this definition up, and it says. They excel in coming up with new ideas and initiating experiences. However, they can struggle with focus and self-discipline. Big description of me. So what can we learn from Undistracted to give us some tools to be focused and take this time about this season in our life? What tools would you give us?
Yeah, I would use all your creativity, all of your, energy that got you to Rwanda and all these other places in your life, all the things that made you excel professionally. And I would say, what if I try to outfox myself? Like I'm always in a hurry, like go, 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 go. I send people like get well now cards. like go, go, go.
Not soon.
So I bought a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle, and I drive that car around. Now I can afford a Prius or something, I suppose, but I bought this thing. It was in a barn in Oregon, and I made the engine run. And this thing tops out at about 41 miles an hour. It is not seen 42 miles an hour yet, ever. And it's helped me go a little bit more slowly. So I'm not in a hurry. That car does not have hurry in it. And so outfox yourself, come up with, say, this is something that's a weakness of mine. It's kind of getting in the way of my relationships because I'm always in such a hurry. And so what I'm going to do is slow the cadence down. Maybe if you can relate to this, schedule fewer things, take Fridays off, do a no-fly zone. That doesn't mean it's that corner of the garage that's cleaned out so you can just put a bunch of new junk in it. To say like, no fly zone, treat it like the Sabbath. To say, I'm not scheduling Fridays. That's for me to refresh, recoup, fly a kite, but it can't have anything to do with an iPhone in it. It can't have anything to do with being productive or efficient.
Yeah.
It's just for me to recharge. And it's actually a really good strategy too. So if you were to try that experiment with all this extra time you'd have on your hands, most guys aren't going to go knock off a liquor store. They're going to say, what are more meaningful things that I can do with that time? And just trust that God will invite you into some really beautiful things. I've shared with you, I'm in San Quentin every 3 weeks, not for knocking off a liquor store, but I teach a class there. And I'm telling you, that has been the most energizing things, because it means that every week I get 5 or 10 calls from guys at San Quentin because they want to talk about stuff. I'm like one of the guys that they see every 3 weeks. So that has been so rewarding to me. And I take notes on all my calls with these guys because they've always got the most deep, unintentionally deep things to say about life and living and what matters. And I always thought people in jail would be there saying, they got the wrong guy, or it wasn't me. I'm the only guy in here that isn't, guilty. And by contrast, I've never met a guy at San Quentin who hasn't told me I did it and I deserve the consequences of that. And that is just so profound, just to take an idea like that. And it came from me saying, I'm putting on the calendar every 3 weeks, I'm at San Quentin. And then I buy non-refundable tickets. I'm not bailing out because I'm too cheap to buy them again. And so like that idea to outsmart yourself. So if you tend to cancel things, non-refundable tickets, because you don't want to buy that ticket to Maui twice. So to say, I'm taking the love of my life to Maui because it is important to her. And I'm going to leave the phone at home. And if there's something important that happens, I'm going to find out.
Yeah, I think that's when I think about some of my times experiencing myself as a 7. It's just what you described. When someone asks me to go do something 6 months out, I often say no, because there's so many other options that could come up between now and then. And it happens all the time for me in social settings, not so much work, but I have found that if I can take that deep breath, commit, be focused, and not worry about the FOMO that I have, even in life planning, it works a lot better.
And make a list of the people you want to meet this year, not because I want to take a selfie with them, but just people I think that are really interesting. There's a motorcycle rider, Travis Pastrana, who can do 4 flips in the air backwards and still land this motorcycle. And I've just always thought he was kind of boss. And so I just dropped him a note to say like, hey, can we meet? And he wrote back and said, yes. And something like, that's awesome. So now it's just the details. I'm not saying get swept away in that, but I would say find some things that are of interest to you and stop deferring them. And I think having a weekend away with you guys to just say, what are the important things? What's the call I need to make? What's the apology I need to give? What's the thing I need to just let go of? And just to say, man, this isn't a chapter 11 reorganization. This is a chapter 7 discharge. Like we're just letting that go. In our faith community, you'd call that grace. But that idea to just say, I'm not trying to figure out who is right and who is wrong. I just assume I'm always right. And I'm also assuming that it doesn't matter. That what being right isn't what I'm aiming for. Being Jesus is what I'm aiming for. And so each person in their own way, with their own faith expression and experience, will find their own words for that. But again, find a quiet spot for a couple days to circle up with you guys to figure it out. That's worth it.
I'm going to deviate just a second, just because I love your story, San Quentin. You could go to a lot of different places. What stirs in your heart to go to San Quentin? What is it about your heart and your passion that as you buy that non-cancelable ticket?
Yeah, those guys, man. We went around the last time we had a graduation for this class I was teaching, and the guys get time off their sentence by going to the class. But here's the crazy part. 2/3 of the guys in the class are in for life. They don't get time off of, I guess, a moment before they die. They're like, you're free. But we had a graduation. I brought in caps and gowns, and these are guys that went straight into San Quentin. They didn't do high school. They didn't do college. And so it was their first time with caps and gowns. And I got permission from the warden to bring in 200 Subway sandwiches with cookies. And I asked these guys, I did a little fact checking to figure out when in the 1960s Subway opened. And I asked guys, hey, raise your hand if you haven't had a Subway sandwich for 10 years. And all these guys raised their hand.
Wow.
Who hasn't had one for 20 years? Who hasn't had one for 30 years? There was a guy that the last time he ate Subway sandwich was 33 years ago. And they didn't even have cookies back then. And I was just thinking how beautiful it was. There's a scene in the Shawshank Redemption. Remember, they're putting a new roof on the jail, and the guy bartered him some tax advice for a couple bottles of beer for his buddies. And he said, that afternoon, we were free men. And I'm telling you, sitting in a circle with these guys as they're pounding 200 Subway sandwiches, it was like they were free guys. And there were bars all the way around, but they were free men. And I go there to experience, ironically, what it looks to experience freedom. Because these guys are caged, yet because of their faith, because of their worldview, they're some of the freest, most uninhibited guys I know. You want to go deep with some guys? Oh, go deep with a guy from San Quentin who shot a guy in 5 minutes of rage 35 years ago. And he says, you know what? I deserve that. Guy will never be with his family again because of me. I've experienced so much humility, so much wisdom and maturity, and so much honesty there. That's why I go. I go to listen. Awesome. I don't teach them a thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So in the last few minutes, when we do our weekends, we spend Sunday morning if we do it on a weekend, or the last section if we do it in the middle of the week. And we let guys go away for a little bit, and I give them some materials from Dream Big. And we've said, hey, you've taken a look at your past, you've checked in on where you are in the present, but now let's just take some time to dream a little bit about where God could be taking you. What's the path that maybe you haven't thought about before, or maybe you have and haven't taken steps yet, but what are a couple of things out of Dream Big that you would want people who are listening to hear, that maybe they just do this on their own without coming to one of our weekends?
Yeah, I just hope that people will take a time to reflect. Sometimes we just get going. It's just normative for us to be going Mach 5 with your hair on fire. And then, these important words from Jesus to his friends to come aside and rest for a while, quiet the room. If you've ever been in a big ballroom where somebody's up in front trying to speak and they can't be heard over all the noise, and then somebody starts tapping the glass to just say, quiet down. Somebody's got something to say. You're the guy tapping the glass in people's lives. They're saying, and it's not you that has something to say. You're making a space where they can hear themselves speak things that are true over themselves, write it down, and then go execute on that plan. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I love the tools that we have offered to the men, and your insights that you've provided along the way. So we're really early, super early in 2023. What's big in Bob Goff's life for the next 12 months? You're always having me, hey, give me a 12-month plan, give me a 24-month plan. What's on Bob Goff's 12-month plan?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is making some changes, some mid-course corrections. That's how you get to the mood, 1,000 mid-course corrections. And so I'm pivoting from something I'm good at, which is traveling around and speaking to people, to something I want to get better at, which is being available for my grandkids. Now, my grandkids are 3.5, and one of them doesn't even know it has arms and legs, and one of them hasn't even learned to walk. So, but my kids know whether I'm available or not. And so what I want to do during this season, it's a season of availability to my family. There have been the last 15 or 20 years availability to people that I was speaking at. And before that, 30 years of being available to clients as a lawyer. Now I want to be available to my family and grandkids. And I'm hoping that that availability will create some memories that'll outlast me. Now, I'm not going to be sitting on the back porch just pining away the hours. I'm not going to take up whittling, because whittling is turning something into nothing. I'm taking up carving, because carving is turning nothing into something. And that, I think, is what God wants to do in my life. And I think in yours and the people that would come to your retreats, that God would do some carving, not just some whittling.
Yeah, that's awesome. On your story of grandkids, we have 6 of them, which is awesome. And our second to the youngest turned 1 in October, and we were planning a trip to go out of town for the weekend of his first birthday party, and had it planned, had everything booked to go, and our daughter said, "Well, you're going to miss his first birthday," and I went, "Well, he's not going to know. What's the difference?" And she said, "Yeah, but we'll know. And this is important to us." And it was a great reminder, just what you said. Your kids are watching how we live our lives, what are our priorities. And we adjusted, we canceled the plans and got a chance to experience the first birthday party with them. And so we're super glad we did. And part of our new life as well.
Yeah, and you'll miss fewer first steps. And you'll miss fewer of the next steps. That just the assumption in their world about your life will change. The assumption is you'll be present for those things, rather than the assumption is that I'll be in Poughkeepsie. And by changing those assumptions, we'll start changing our behaviors. We'll change the behaviors because we have a plan. And then we importantly put a shot clock on the plan. We don't just say someday I'm going to do this. You just say, by January, I'm going to cancel speaking events or buy a slow car or whatever it is. And I just think that is taking all these trips around the sun, and it could be misread as apathy, but it's actually strategy at its best, that you've got a strategy, and it's one that'll last. It's worked for centuries. It'll keep working. Availability.
So, hey, well, thanks for being with us here today.
Wow,
really appreciate it. It's sort of a crescendo event for finishing strong, and really appreciate your support and your encouragement.
Yeah, this is awesome. You're off to the races.
Yeah, and if any listeners are interested, go to www.finishing-strong.org, and lots of resources there. Our goal is to be a resource for people in this transition. If you come to weekend, great, love to have you. But if not, then hopefully you find some things on the website that are helpful for you. So,
just go to the weekend instead. I'm putting in my plug, because it's kind of our must be present to win. You can gain information by watching the Discovery Channel, or you can go to the tundra in Africa and really experience what it's like. So don't settle for just gathering more information. I got all the information I need. What I want is relationship, experience, a couple shared memories like that. And I think that's one of the things that you're offering.
Awesome. Well, there are a couple spots left in Vail, which is in the middle of ski season, a place right at the bottom of the slope. So if you hear this and want to join us there, that'd be great. And the next one will be in Colorado this summer. So again, thanks, Bob. Appreciate your time with us here today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this first Finishing Strong podcast. Hey, if you're interested in learning more about transitioning from working full-time to something else, just connect with us at www.finishing-strong.org. I had to get a little creative with that, since that's not the most unusual combination of words, but it is www.finishing-strong.org. On this website, you're going to find some great resources, our schedule of upcoming events, weekends, and then this month, we're going to conduct a drawing for an autographed copy of Bob's latest book, Undistracted. Just visit us on the website, leave your email, and we will be holding the drawing on February 28th. I look forward to joining you soon with another Finishing Strong podcast.